Hello, my night owls. Today, on this very day, not on this very day, but on this very day in 2011, we had a death in the family. And on this day, so long ago, I remember it so vividly. I was in my best friend's room. We were hanging out, talking about the future, talking about weddings and stuff like that. And I knew my grandmother was very old. She was getting up in age, and I was like, well, if my grandmother can't make it to my wedding, I would move the wedding to her, and so she can see me, get married. And of course, that never happened. Anyway, so we were sitting there talking about the future and everything like that, and I got a call from my mom. And I sat up, I'm like, hey Mom, and she's like, Alicia. I'm like, yeah, and I could tell by the way her voice sounded that she was upset and she was serious. And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And she's like, do not freak out, do not cry, don't freak out, because I already have to deal with your sister freaking out and crying. So what I'm about to tell you, do not freak out. And I'm like, okay, what is it, Mom? And she's like, your grandmother is in the hospital. And I just I don't know how to really explain it. I just tears automatically welled up, and then I just started crying, and I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, and she kind of told me what happened, but I was my mind was going all different directions that I couldn't really think properly, and I'm so we hung up, and I'm like, Becca, can you guys drive me to the hospital? That's my best friend's name, if you don't know that. Her name is Rebecca. Well, Becca, I call her for short. And she's like, yeah, we can. And so they drove me to the hospital as fast as they could, and I was just sitting there, and all my mind was just going all different directions, and I'm just freaking out. And they dropped me off, and I said bye to them, and then I went inside with my bag into the hospital, and my mom's like, here, I'll take your bag out to the car so you don't have it with you. And I'm like, okay. And I remember walking in after I gave mom my bag to take to her car. I remember looking around to see everybody, and I mean everybody. And my family is huge. Everybody was there, and they all looked. They were crying. Everyone was crying. Everyone looked exhausted and stuff like that. And I found a place in the waiting room, and we sat down. And this doctor or nurse came to us. And they're like, "Well, we're gonna move you all to a private family waiting room to see what they're gonna do with my grandma." And we're like, "All right." So we went into this room, and we're all sitting there, and we were talking. I remember a lot of crying, people freaking out. My sister, she lost it, and she started punching the wall and freaking out, and everyone had to calm her down. And we were waiting. They were gonna pull the plug sooner on her, because she wasn't gonna make it, of course. But my dad is the oldest son, and he was supposed to make the decision to pull the plug or whatever, but my grandmother knew he wouldn't do that, so he left it to her second oldest, which was Lori, my Aunt Lori, who was taking pretty much her caretaker at the time. They were all living together. Her daughter, Nicole, my cousin Nicole, my Aunt Lori, and my grandmother, they all lived under the same roof. We were all sitting there talking and stuff like that, and after I don't know, it seemed like ever, they finally came in and they're like, okay, time to go in and say your goodbyes. And I'm like, everyone's like, okay. And some people went in and said goodbye to her, and some people didn't because they didn't want that memory of her. And I was like, I want to go see her, even though I really didn't wanted that, like the whole memory, but I wanted to. I'm like, I want to go see her. And my mom was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. My mom didn't go in and see her because she didn't want that memory of her. But I went in with my dad, and I was sitting there, and my dad's like, I'm gonna be just by the door. Okay. And I went over. And actually my dad didn't even go by the door. He said that he was going to go by the door, but he wasn't. He was like right near me. And she was just laying there, and she was taking small breaths, but not full breaths. And she was hooked up to all these wires, and she had a tube down her throat that pretty much helped her breathe. And she was only taking small little breaths. And I sat there and I stared at her, and said goodbye. And then we walked out and into the waiting room where everyone was sobbing and crying, and I sat down where I was sitting, and I broke down. I cried and cried. I cried so much that I made myself physically sick because I cried so much, and I started having a hard time breathing, and I was like, Alicia, you need to calm down. And I was having a major breakdown, and I started crying, and finally they got me to calm down, and Mom gave me some gum which would help with your stomach ache, and I chewed on it and I felt better afterwards. But I remember calling. At that time I had two best friends, Rebecca and Beverly, and I think I called Beverly first, and I cried on the phone with her, and she's like, I'm sorry that you lost your grandmother or whatever, and I'm like, yeah. And then I called Rebecca and I sobbed on the phone with her, and she said the same thing, and then we were all leaving, and I don't know why, we were all leaving, and I don't know why, but I looked at my mom and I asked, wait, weren't they supposed to pull the plug? And she's like, sweetheart, they already had done it. And I lost it all over again, because I don't know, something in my head, it didn't connect that they had already done it. So when we were leaving, I asked, and she's like, Alicia, they already done it, so she's gone now. And of course I lost it all over again because I didn't connect the dots. But I think it was a month or so later, I don't remember exactly, but I asked her what had actually happened, how was she, why was she rushed to the hospital and all that stuff like that. And I found out that she was to take a nap. She didn't sleep in a bed, she slept in a armchair, and she went in to take a nap, and or no, she was sitting in the living room, and she went in to take a nap there, and she was sleeping, and I don't know, there was a couple of stories. One said it was my Aunt Lori who found her, but then somebody said it was my brother and Steven, my cousin Steven, that found her, but I guess it was Aunt Lori who actually found her. She went in to check on her, and she realized something was off, and she didn't look right. Her face was paler than normal, and she went over and kind of like shook her a bit, and her arm had fallen to her side, and she knew that something was not right, and she called 911. And my mom and my sister, they were like a block away, and they were in front of a red light, and she saw ambulance whiz by. They were like sitting there at a stop sign, and they heard the sirens going, and they whizzed by her, and she's like looked at the ambulance, and my mom was like, do not stop in front of that house. Do not stop in front of that house. And they stopped in front of that house, and she didn't even fucking care that there was a red light. She ran the red light. She ran another red light to get to where they were. And by the time she had gotten there, they were already inside, put her on the stretcher, and they were bringing her out. And my mom and my sister had seen her, and they knew that something was not right, and they rushed her up to the hospital, but she was actually dead right then. She was already gone, but Aunt Lori had put her on life support, so my Uncle Weasel, which is my dad's brother, could get there to say his goodbyes, because he's all the way out in Arizona, he is, and she didn't want to pull that away from him. She didn't want to take that away from him because he was all the way out in Arizona. And my cousin Stephanie was here in New York City at the time. She wasn't in Arizona. And my cousin Coco and Katrina and all of them were out in Arizona, and they were completely heartbroken and sad because they didn't get a chance to come out and say goodbye and stuff like that, which was very sad. But they all made it home to, I think, for the service, I think. Yeah, they all made it here for the service to see her. But she wasn't she was cremated, so they had all her ashes in a box sitting on this little podium. And I remember the service. After that, we all went to my cousin's house, and we all sat there and shared some memories and had food and drinks, and then after that, me, my mom, my dad, my sister, we all walked to my dad's place. So we had a death in the family, and she had died April 3rd, 2011. It's been 6 years since she has passed away, but it still hurts, of course. And she was a wonderful person. She was amazing. I loved her to absolute death. She always had a way to make you laugh, even when you were having a really bad day. I remember I would be so mad at my siblings, my sister, my brother, whoever, my mom, my dad. I'd be so mad, and I'll sit down and I'll be pouting and sad, and she'll be like, Alicia, in her soothing voice, and I'm like, yeah, in the attitude way, and she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, don't laugh, and then I just couldn't help but laugh and just smile, and she's like, there we go, and I miss that. I miss going and talking to her and having her say that to me, and I miss her. I really do. I miss her a lot. But yeah, that's the end of this video, my night owls. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see all you beautiful now.